Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to this track session. You have joined the room with our topic, how to scale ABM without losing effectiveness. So, you've come to the best room in the house, obviously. And to top that off, this session is being moderated by the one and only Mari Tapanen, who is the Managing Director, APAC, at the marketing practice. And she was formerly the head of marketing, enterprise, commercial, and channel at IBM, and also introduced ABM there at IBM. So who better to run this session, right? Mari, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you so much for everybody for joining our session today. We are talking about something I'm super passionate about, and it's account-based marketing. But not just that. Today, we will be talking about scalability. What actually is scalability? How do you do it? When do you do it? What is the right time to do it? And there'll be lots of interesting conversations that you will be part of with us. I'm joined today with Colleen Bagley from Adobe and Kerry Scotland from Verizon, two amazing marketing leaders who've kindly said yes to my request and will be joining their journeys with me. So let's start with some introductions. Colleen, let's start with you. Could you share a little bit about yourself and your role at Adobe?
Of course, thanks so much, Mari. And hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Bagley. I'm the Enterprise Marketing Lead here at Adobe. I lead the marketing efforts for our Australia, New Zealand business, but I also lead our account-based marketing programs across the Asia Pacific region. I have always been in the technology industry. I've worked at brands like IBM in my earlier career and at Microsoft, and now I'm at Adobe. I'm really passionate about how technology really helps customers to solve problems and then see how our customers in turn really use that technology to really make a difference in the lives of our community. And given our current environment, this is really even more important than ever. So what's it like working at Adobe? Look, it's really quite unique. We can explore and create, use our creativity side. We are empowered to really try new ideas, and we get to use some of the tech that we actually sell. So it's quite unique. At the enterprise level, in terms of our account-based marketing programs, we have a end-to-end go-to-market model for marketing automation with our one-to-many programs. And then more recently, we've really focused more around our one-to-one ABM and one-to-few, and that includes scaling the program across the region. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about ABM.
Hello, welcome to the session, everyone. It's really good to be here. My name is Kerry Scotland, and I head up the field and digital marketing team in Asia Pacific for Verizon. I've been at Verizon for almost 9 years now, and my passion, when I thought long and hard about this, it was pretty quick to come to the top. My passion is developing high-performing marketing teams. And in fact, my favourite time of the working week is when I'm with my team. They constantly inspire me and they inspire each other. And I guess my second favourite thing is producing results. And it's funny because we as a team, we group cheer when we generate new significant leads or we contribute to sales funnel. And top of the pile is if it's an ABM lead. It's a very loud cheer. At Verizon, we've taken a broad one-to-many ABM approach for the last 4 years or so. And our journey this year is the start of our first one-to-a-few ABM programs after a very interesting pilot last year. So, Mari, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you so much, Colleen and Kerry. Team, at TMP, we surveyed some Australian B2B marketing leaders in depth in a thought leadership piece that we called ABM Unwrapped. I'll be sharing some of those learnings during these sessions and what we uncovered. But with that said, what I wanted to do first, Colleen and Kerry, is really set the context for scalability. what does it actually mean? I mean, maybe it's not the same thing for everyone. Can you scale when you first start? Or do you have to start somewhere and then scale? Does scaling mean that you get better return on investment? Or what if scaling means that you lose the essence of ABM, which is all about personalization? So let's start with that. So Colleen, what does scalability mean for you?
Yeah, of course, Mari. And look, everyone has their own definition of both ABM and what it means to scale. And it really depends upon, I guess, your organisation's maturity and business strategy. Firstly, my definition of ABM in itself is really having that strategic approach to your go-to-market efforts that really aligns both your business strategy and tighten partnership with your sales organisation. Scaling ABM then becomes how you evolve and you strengthen that strategy and that partnership for the highest impact. So scaling ABM inside Adobe has really been taking the success that we've had on our ANZ pilot of our one-to-one in our top accounts. We've added some more accounts, plus we're looking at clustering a group of accounts, and we then evolve some of those best practices for us to then scale to other countries across the region. And I guess a few things when we're thinking about scaling is really to consider, though, on your ABM journey, a couple of things that you might really need to think about. And firstly, that's really having that common knowledge and language of understanding ABM. So what is it? How do you support it? Make sure that your sales understands that you have set, the expectations on the approach. Is it for everyone or is it just for your top accounts? And then over the last year, we have, as marketers, I've had all our marketers across the region trained in the fundamentals of ABM by a global training organisation. And that really set the foundation for us and our marketing team to adopt that common framework for account-based marketing. This really has then allowed us to have that solid foundation. It allows us to be able to then share assets, content, and leverage that across the organisation, which then itself provides for a more consistent approach for scalability.
That's great. Thank you, Colleen. And many of our Unwrapped interview leaders also talked about this idea of starting with a pilot or starting with a one program and then scaling out based on the success. I also loved hearing that idea of that education and ensuring that those that are part of the program, that are the stakeholders, are part of the journey from the start, then that allows that scalability almost naturally. Kerry, your ABM journey at Verizon has been quite different. What does scalability mean for you?
Yeah, thanks, Mari. For me, scalability actually means to be able to scale up or down as required. So deploying approaches that align with whatever the regional growth strategy is of the time, and it's usually a 12-month period. And so if I look at scalability through the ABM lens, for me, it's really synonymous with agility. So the being agile to either up or down scale, to the one-to-many, one-to-a-few, or indeed one-to-one as required. So it's a little bit different, Mari.
Which is great for us to learn those two different approaches. So let's explore that a little bit deeper. So if scalability is a strategic decision, and I believe that it should be, what drives that scalability? Maybe it is that pilot, maybe that is the business priority, but what were the triggers in your situations? And let's go back to Colleen, please.
Yeah, of course, Mari. Look, today, I guess in terms of triggers for Adobe, today every business is a digital business. Customers expect engaging, personalised digital experiences. I expect that as a consumer, but they also expect that next generation technology or platform to really deliver on that experience. And, you know, Adobe being an enterprise organisation, there's been an incredible pace of innovation, successful acquisitions over the last number of years, expanded solution portfolios, new markets, new customer solutions, and it's all presented huge growth and capabilities for our customers. So with any new acquisition, a new market, comes new perspectives and ideas. And so the trigger for us inside Adobe was really that we needed to evolve, and we needed to really look at how we think about to scale our marketing approach so that we could support that business transformation and that market growth. The other trigger for us that was our leadership support and the opportunity to drive new innovations, particularly, you know, during hard times, that feeling that you can be empowered to try new things has been really key. And so, you know, sales and marketing leaders for us across our organisations have been really supportive on our ABM efforts. And, you know, and I guess the next step for us is really having that connection to the funnel and some of those hard metrics. And all of that's still really evolving for us.
That's really interesting, Colleen. Having the backing of leadership teams and being supported in trying new things, it really is important. So looking at triggers for us, I think it might be good for me to take you through a chronology of ABM at Verizon and to look at the triggers along the way. So as I mentioned in the intro, we have had a one-to-many ABM for a few years. And now the trigger for that was to align sales and marketing to a single target account list across the region, developed each year by sales ops. And that works really well for us. We use our target list of customers in awareness, engagement, and lead gen campaigns of all sorts. So in paid media, digital display, content syndication, our podcast series, email nurture, telemarketing events, you know, all of those typical B2B campaigns, we use our target account list. So then if we move now to early last year, which was a very strange time for everyone, but we wanted to explore ABM one to a few to see if we could impact funnel by going broad and deep into a few accounts. So that was the trigger for a small pilot ABM program into a handful of accounts. It was really a proof of concept. And we wanted to understand how we could move from that one to many and keep that going, and also have the one to a few. So what could it look like? What skills did we need? Resources, platforms, the span of time of the program, and of course the scope of work. And the 4 key learnings from that proof of concept were all around people, investment, and process. We found we needed a dedicated marketing owner and a marketing sponsor, whereas in the proof of concept, we had absorbed that into our field marketing team. Sales needed to be actively engaged, and really importantly, they needed to choose the accounts for the program based on data insights and local knowledge. We needed to partner with a specialist ABM agency. We tried to do it in-house and it just wasn't possible for us. We needed an agency with the skills and the resources to do it justice. And we had to understand the budget investment that we would need to bring it to life. So moved to late 2020 and early 2021, there was a new trigger, and it was quite opportune as it happens, unexpected in a way. But this for us was when our APAC big deals team had a significant uplift in their growth targets for this year. And they were well and truly ready to actively partner with marketing to help them reach those targets, and all in the acquisition or the greenfield target account space. So apart from a willing and engaged sales cohort in the big deals team, we had the data we needed for making targeted decisions. We had the investment at that time for a program based on the scope we needed, and we had an agency selected with the skills and ready to go.
Thank you very much, Colleen and Kerry. And whilst your journeys are quite different, I think what we've learned so far is that the business requirements, opportunities, drives a lot of the scaling decision making. You both talk about perhaps starting with pilots, where you can get some great learnings, and also the teams and the skills, whether they are in-house or supported by partners such as agencies. Let's now talk a little bit about the scaling between one-to-one and one-to-few and one-to-many. Really curious to understand whether, again, that requires a whole new set of decision-making steps, or whether the key components that you have to have in place are very similar. So, Colleen, perhaps we start with you again and then go across to Kerry.
Yeah, of course, Mari. And, Kerry touched on, the importance of people and process and investment. And, I'd add to that technology, because you lean into, with any scaling any program, you do lean into people, process and the technology, and you lean differently into each of those approaches depending on whether it's a one-to-one, a one-to-few or a one-to-many. So ultimately you really need to have a clear framework and ROI model. When you're scaling a one-to-one program, for example, to more accounts, it really takes resource and investment. So you need to really ensure that if you're investing in an account, that there will actually be the return on that investment long term. And if not, then maybe you don't scale, or maybe you look at the criteria for selecting the accounts. At Adobe, we actually run on a data-driven operating model, or what we call DDOM. And this is really at the core of our decision-making for choosing the right accounts, for areas for focus, but also, more importantly, for making those informed decisions. And so this is really one of the first steps when you're looking to scale. It's really ensuring you have the right accounts, the resource, the budgets, so that you can really start to scale successfully. And you have to agree that all with sales. And so we've also developed internally what we call an ABM hub. And so we have regular connection points with our colleagues across the business as well, that we can keep up to date and across some of those best practices internally. And then, as I mentioned, we've been doing one-to-many. We've started on our one-to-one journey, and we're now evolving to one-to-few. So the opportunity for us is also about connecting some of those assets and journeys for each of those programs. And, Kerry, speaking to you earlier on this, I know you've had quite a different experience.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. But first, I'd really like to say I've learnt a new acronym and I love it, DDOM. Brilliant. So thank you. And yes, look, I do agree that one-to-many, the broad ABM approaches, are really enabled mostly by technology, of course, by the targeting, but assuming we've got that, it's the technology, the platforms, so marketing automation and a synced CRM platform at a minimum. These types of programs, the broad one-to-many, are a light touch for sales. So they might be interested in the topics, they're certainly interested in any results, but they're not heavily involved in the campaign strategy or the execution. Whereas in the one-to-a-few ABM programs, I think, and we're finding it is quite different in that the key stakeholders, including sales, need to be brought in and bought in to the program from start to finish and consistently along the way. And so for us, the key stakeholders are to have a senior non-marketing executive sponsor, usually a VP or equivalent, sales teams as equal partners, a skilled agency in ABM with regular reporting, really important, a marketing owner and a marketing sponsor, and indeed for us, the whole marketing team, understanding the program and they are on the periphery feeding in results from their and the campaigns that they're running, the supporting ancillary campaigns. Just one thing I think might be worth noting here is that languages it's a really important topic, and it does have challenges. So for us at Verizon in APAC, we separate the English-speaking programs, which is ANZ, North and South Asia, most of the countries there, English. And for us, the only non-English ABM program that we look at and indeed nurture and so on is Japanese. So if we separate those into their separate focus programs, that has a better result.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Colleen. Kerry, just an add-on question for you. To what extent did you use data and insights to determine which accounts and regions to scale into?
Yeah, really good question, Marie. Having the right accounts is crucial. So collectively, for the one to a few, we selected accounts with the big deals team, and these accounts were the ones that would have the greatest growth potential. They're the ones that could do the big multi-million-dollar deals. So we looked at the usual demographics, vertical markets, number of employees, number of countries they operate in, revenues, any previous purchases with Verizon, total addressable market within that company, share of wallet, contestability, if we had contract end dates, competitors, and information like that. But once we had all of that data, we passed it by the broader sales teams because it's really important they have the local knowledge about the accounts, what's happening day to day, month to month, what strategies are changing. So pure data does not capture all of that. So I think that's really important. We also did look at lookalike modelling for white space. I don't think it's necessary, excuse me, but it is a really nice to have.
Thank you. And interestingly, when I spoke to some of the other marketing leaders about their ABM success, some of them were actually getting quite concerned because the ABM that they had programs that they had undertaken had become so successful that the sellers actually wanted to nominate all of their accounts. Tell us about that, Kerry, and how what has been your experience at Verizon?
Oh, yes. I hear you, Marie. And it's a nice problem to have, I think. Firstly, I would say you need to set expectations early on and very clearly, especially around the number of accounts that will be in the program. So as well as the number of accounts, well, the number of accounts actually is dictated by the investment level you have, so the budget you can spend, the agency skills, the internal resource capacity, and the duration of the program that you're choosing. That really sets the foundation for the number that you can incorporate. So once sales understands that structure and the reasons for the selected accounts and have been involved, we find they readily do come on board. In our case, we opted for a short and sharp program this year of 6 months with 30 accounts. We believe that would give us a good time to see some results. And we also, in that 6-month program, we did add that second list of lookalike accounts. We had 35, just as a second list to use if we needed that.
Thank you. And what I really like is this idea of the sellers are part of the journey and setting expectations. And then once you've set expectations, your phase 2, phase 3 could be again something quite different. Colleen, what about scaling across Asia Pacific? Your pilot and program kicked off in Australia, and then you thought, hey, let's go broader than that. What learnings did you have?
Yeah, absolutely, Mari. And, I agree with everything that Kerry says. It's so important to have sales with you hand in hand along that journey. It's super important. And it's the same when you're scaling across the regions as well. So, as you mentioned, we did start with a small pilot of a few programs in our ANZ market, which very quickly drew the attention of other regions. And so if you are looking to scale a program across other markets, you do need to start with that strong foundation, the data insights, the governance, and also that strong partnership with sales. And really the ability to scale, you also need to make sure that you have, whilst you've got tight programs and governance, you really need to make sure that you allow enough flexibility, because there are nuances, especially when it comes to local markets where there are cultural, location, language, and different market influences to consider. Kerry talked about the language was one of the biggest influences for Verizon. And so another something else that you do need to consider when you're scaling across countries is also ABM capability. As I mentioned, we had all of our field marketers trained so that we could all start from a solid foundation. And we were very fortunate that we could tap into a development fund, which Adobe supports, an internal learning fund. So that's something that, people might want to think about when you're starting an ABM program or you're looking to scale. You do need to have the skills in country. So tapping into some sort of development and training might be an option for you. And then, also looking at the capacity of your local market. Account-based marketing doesn't really replace existing marketing programs. Rather, it really complements your program. So if you're in the field and you're running executive engagement or you're running events or digital, it's ABM complements those programs, and it's really adding that tailored layer over the top of those programs. So you really do need to think about the resourcing in market and the percentage of time potentially that the field would be required to spend on ABM. And sometimes you need to hire a resource, or you may need to lean into an agency to help support that as well. And then finally, and Kerry touched on this as well, is really around the readiness of your sales leaders to be involved, to be engaged, and to really support you, and the investment that's really required to run an ABM program.
Thank you. Really, really insightful. Kerry, Colleen, I actually wanted to ask you about scalability and tailoring, and does that impact the power of ABM, and how do you believe that should be managed?
Yeah, look, in terms of tailoring and personalisation, Mari, when you look at one-to-one ABM, it's very customer-led and it's highly personalised. So if you're looking to scale to more accounts, you really have to be clear on the selection of those accounts. One-to-one ABM really doesn't scale unless you have the right resource and the right investment. The industry standard in terms of resourcing is really you have one ABM head for 5 accounts. So if you're looking to scale to more than 5 accounts, you really do need to think about that resourcing model. Then in terms of your one-to-many programs, and I know we've talked about this, it's really about leaning into technology. For example, at Adobe, we use Marketo as our marketing automation, and we use Adobe.com as our content hub. So this really helps scale some of the personalisation based on the insights and the group of accounts together where there might be like problems or lookalike scenarios that we could solve. And then finally, you can templatize programs. So you can look at ways that you can take something that works in one area and you can templatize that to where maybe you only need a certain amount of personalization. So my advice would be, if you're looking to implement ABM and you've have scaling in mind, because it may change or it might influence the approach of how you actually execute and how your actual ability is to be able to scale in the first place.
Great, thank you. So let's move on to the teams. I know we've talked about the sales teams and the requirement to have them on the journey from the start. We talked about the team and the education that's required internally, that it is a transformation for many people who undertake ABM programs for the first time, or even when you start scaling, and Colleen, you touched on this to say, maybe there are ways that we can build templates we can leverage and we can learn along the way, which in its by nature drives scalability and growth in the program. I'm curious, Kerry, it would appear that nirvana of ABM is something when it's owned by everyone in the organization, not necessarily seen as the new marketing strategy or new marketing program. Are you seeing that at Verizon?
Oh, absolutely. We see it this way. In fact, last year when we ran the small pilot of 1 to a few, we took marketing out of the name. So we called it the account-based program, and the ABP, so a new acronym, the ABP, because we didn't want to ostracize sales at all. We needed them to come in. We didn't want them to look at this as a marketing program. This year, we have reverted to ABM because I think our teams are more mature. They've been educated along the way, so they don't see that as a barrier. But I think that just serves Marie to really support what you found, that everyone needs to be part of the program. It's not marketing.
Yeah, look, I actually really agree with you, Kerry, and I think that sales participation and the involvement in some of those key programs and the ABM journey at Adobe. We're tightly aligned with our sales team, even in terms of how we are actually structured. I have a dedicated sales team that I support. I'm very much a valued seat at that table. I have a deep knowledge of each of my accounts. I attend account meetings and often customer meetings and QBRs. It's a huge investment of my time, but something that I'm very interested in and understanding our customers and how Adobe can really bring their ambitions to life. I started actually with one account and got some quick wins, and then that account very quickly became very visible, not only to other account execs in my team, but also to our other executives and leadership team. So I think in addition to sales and in addition to your executives, you also need to think about the broader marketing functions. If you've got a PR and a comms, if you've got events, if you've got digital, if you've got your executive, even marketing insights and data science, if you have one, it is really a collaborative approach, and programs across the organisation really need to align. Otherwise, it can become quite disjointed and also become very confusing.
Thank you very much for that, and it's been really wonderful to see, Colleen, both you and Kerry, how you brought the sales team on the journey with you, and even to the point where they are part of the WIP meetings in the weekly regular cadences, which really shows that the sellers are invested in this as we are. Colleen, tell me a little bit more about the success of getting the sellers on board. I think sometimes in B2B marketing, we are still learning to partner with our sales leaders in a way that really drives the optimal outcomes for them as well as their clients and prospects. But what's the key to success here?
Oh, look, I don't think there's a silver bullet, Mari. I think, it is hard work and it is a real partnership. But I think one of the things that you can do as a marketer or as an account-based marketer is really agree upfront with your sales team. What does success look like? It may not all be about revenue. Sometimes it could be supporting a relationship build. It could be an upcoming meeting. It could be a bid. It could be a response or an awareness tactic. So my advice here in terms of what does success look like, it's really having that tight account plan jointly with sales. And it's also about looking at, you know, what does success look like, and where does marketing really need to help the most? It helps you to be really, really focused. And if sales are not on board, or not engaged, then you can't really do it. And if you do, then you're more likely that it's not going to be perceived as valuable, or it may not be seen to be impactful. So it's really important to make sure you identify those key success metrics up front with your sales counterparts.
Thank you. And it's interesting because now we're actually talking about scalability actually means the team as well. Not just the accounts, not just the type of programs that we would plan to take to market, but actually scalability is bringing the whole organization on the journey with you. What about the marketing team then, Kerry? We've established that the marketing team needs to be involved and understand what our ABM strategy is and our programs. But what skills do you think you have to have in the marketing team itself to be able to start, deploy ABM programs, let alone scale?
Yeah, really good question. And you know what, I think all of this for marketing and for other teams, but looking at marketing, it's all underpinned by what might be called soft skills, but I think of it as emotional intelligence, or EQ, and we've focused a lot on that in the last year, 18 months in our marketing team. So first, though, and it's not new, but it's worth repeating, that the first thing in ABM for all of the marketers is to put the customer front and centre. And an ABM program is designed to get to know a customer even more, find out more about them, understand where they're going, their direction, their challenges, and so on. That's the heart and the kernel of everything we're doing in ABM. So everyone locked into that. Good collaboration and communication is really key, understanding the reporting, and that's with all of our campaigns, I would say, as marketers, but very important in ABM, especially for the satellite marketers who are feeding in but might not be in that core team. It's how all of the marketers can understand how their campaigns and programs feed into ABM, and having that integrated mindset. It is a whole. We bring it together on the customer, but they are also discrete campaigns and programs. Colleen, do you see something similar?
Look, we do, Kerry, and the only add to your points that you've mentioned is, you know, from an ABM perspective, I think you also need to have some foundational skills in ABM and some of the ABM methodologies. As a marketer, you know, you also need to be quite passionate about what you're doing because it is hard work. And I'd also add to when you talked about your first point on everything is about the customer and putting the customer first. Be curious, you know, especially at the moment, our customers, particularly, you know, across the region with the environment that we're all in, particularly in Australia, our customers are really worried about their staff. They're worried about their customers. So I think at the moment, you know, in the interest of, you know, looking after that community wellbeing, we really need to be really considered about our approach. And so I think having those emotional skills, but also having some ABM methodologies and foundational skills and passion, I would add to your points as well.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the role of the agency. And I'm curious to understand whether your recommendation would be that maybe you start a pilot and you do that in-house and then you scale with an agency, or maybe the agency ideally is there with you from the start as a partner, as you learn, as you build, optimize, and scale. So Colleen, maybe we'll start with you and your experience at Adobe.
Yeah, sure, Mari. Look, I think most marketing teams have quite lean budgets and lean in terms of resource. So, to scale, you really do need a support from an agency. You need an agency, though, that has the expertise in ABM. And you want an agency that can scale with you, particularly if you are looking at scaling across a region or you're scaling to a group of accounts. You need an agency that really understands your business and one that can really run at the same pace. You can really lose credibility so quickly with the business or with your sales team if you don't have that. So really super important. But yes, we lean into an agency. We make sure that we look for agencies that do have the right skills and that can run at the same pace as us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and
that's
what about
interesting.
you, Kerry?
Yeah, that is interesting. Really, to reiterate that the points there that Colleen have made, if we did it in-house, we would need multiple headcount with a range of skills to be able to do it effectively. And so for us at Verizon, our approach is a blend of that in-house or outsourced, that hybrid model. So we have a specialist ABM agency who's geared up with the architecture, the people, the skills and the experience of ABM, coupled with our in-house teams, our in-house platforms, the accounts that we're targeting. And we all work together to build the best processes to get results. And I think this point alone is super critical, and we've spent a lot of time in this 6-month program that we've just concluded to get the processes right and to agree them together, to map them out, to make it really streamlined.
Great, thank you. One of the things, Colleen, you talked about earlier was about setting expectations and perhaps not running before you can walk. Could you talk a little bit about perhaps what are some of the pitfalls if you don't set those expectations very clearly internally and maybe also with the agency?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of scaling and getting some of those early quick wins means that if you're being asked to scale, whether it's to more accounts, to groups of accounts, or even across countries to the region, the business has to be really ready. And sometimes you do have to say no. So don't be afraid to say no. It's critical, and sometimes it's hard, particularly when you move further away from the centre of the program and you're scaling across a region. But it's really, really important, that you do make those critical decisions and you can say no. As marketers, we need to be confident and people will actually respect your decision as a marketer and your point of view as the expert. And so you really have to also ask the question about, is there enough business growth or return for investment that's going to be returned on that account? And so if the account team is either not ready or engaged in ABM, they're all the questions that you need to ask when you're getting those early quick wins. And so the other point I'd probably also make, Mari, is capability and capacity to do it is also another one. ABM is really about being strategic. It's about not just being tactical, but it is about being more strategic with your approach. So in order to do it successfully, you really need to make sure that you can follow that strategic pathway.
Thank you. Thanks. That's great, Colleen. And Kerry, one of the questions that's coming through from the audience is also around success metrics. What did you determine as success measures and is part of your expectation setting when you first started the latest phase of ABM? Could you walk us through what has worked for you and why?
Sure. So, look, the top line KPIs that we took for our one to a few were the number of leads that we could generate, the conversion rates of those leads, and the dollar contribution to sales funnel. That was the top line metric, and that was clearly all that sales was going to be interested in. That was why we were doing it. And that's really important. And so we had, or at every 2 weeks, our reporting, and we reported to those KPIs. And I must say, actually, a lead in this program is a meeting with a senior person on one of the topics. So we've got either security, cybersecurity, or digital transformation topics. So when we get a meeting with a senior person using that BANT style of qualification, that's what we class as a lead. And then we follow that through the normal sales qualification to accepting, qualifying into sales funnel and along the normal funnel stages. But there are other lagging metrics, or the metrics more for the people running the program, the marketers and the agency. So we use things like the social outreach metrics, remembering that our program were all acquisition or new logo greenfield. So a lot of reaching out in social media and measuring the number of connection request acceptances that we had, the number of calls that were made, the number of accounts. This is important, that were in warming. So warming in this program is where an account is really interested, they have a need, they're not quite ready to buy, they're not ready for the meeting. It's perhaps 3 to 4 months out, and they have signified they would like to have a deeper discussion. So we keep those in a warming phase where we touch them a little more frequently, we invite them to events, we send them any new reports or research that we publish, and so on, to keep them warm until we can get a lead or a meeting from them. And we also track people in these accounts in our regular marketing campaigns. So all of the ancillary campaigns, if people from these 30 accounts have come to an event or have done a podcast with us or are in content syndication, we feed all of that back into the ABM program as well to try and get that holistic view of the accounts.
It's great, thank you. Now, Colleen, what if we've started a great ABM program and we think we are onto something really powerful and successful here, and I know all of us feel very passionate about ABM and the return of investment it brings to us as practitioners, but sometimes there are still those people that are skeptical. And when we did our survey with some of the marketing leaders, we did learn that not everybody believes in ABM. And what advice would you give to those team members or those leaders that are coming across some of those skeptical people, Colleen?
Yeah, look, Mari, I think in terms of my advice, you really do need to have a good business case around account-based marketing. You need to be able to articulate and demonstrate that investing in an ABM approach will actually give a higher return, because there's often a trade-off decision that you have to make where you invest in one program at the expense of not investing in something else. So I think the ability to be able to articulate and to be able to showcase and build a business case for account-based marketing is the first thing. The second is that, we've talked a lot about revenue, we talk about attribution and marketing attribution, and it's super important to be able to have that attribution, but don't underestimate the importance of, the reputation and the relationship part of ABM and the impact that makes. If you can showcase, and Kerry talked about this before, that a metric or how they measure it could be with a meeting. And so if you can really showcase that you've got a higher engagement, or you've created a connection or a meeting with your account team, or your sales manager. And if they're willing to support and showcase that on your behalf, that's a huge win. And it really demonstrates that you've got the right partnership and that you're actually focusing in the right area for that particular account. So I think, building out that good business case, having being able to demonstrate the investment and the why of ABM, I think is probably really important. And also understanding, why people may not be supportive. It may be because they don't understand, or maybe they just haven't seen the work that's been done. So I think being able to demonstrate that's probably a key part to that.
That's great, Colleen. Very, very insightful and helpful. We're almost at the end of our time. I know some of you watching us today have shared some questions. Hopefully we've answered some of them. Those that we didn't get to, please reach out to us via LinkedIn, and we would be love to stay connected with you and help you in your ABM journey. As our final question, though, I'd like to ask Colleen and Kerry, what guidance would you give to those marketing and ABM leaders that are starting to scale, expanding their ABM to scale, or starting their journey with the scalability in mind? What is that one thing that they should consider? Maybe Colleen first.
I'm going to say two things, Murray, and I'm probably going to expand on a point I made a little bit earlier about some of the softer parts of ABM, or the storytelling part of ABM that I talk about. And it's, as I mentioned, it's not always about the hard metrics. It can also be about that reputation and relationship. So I think if you do have your sales team and your executives are happy to verbalise the success, whilst it might not be in a trackable metric, it's actually compelling coming from the sales and executive leaders that have helped to build that momentum in your account or your group of accounts. And the second thing that I would advise people is that really promote the work that you do internally. None of us are probably very good at that, but we have to do it as marketers. Use the opportunity to showcase what you're doing, the key wins that you have. Present your ideas at the leadership meeting, present at sales team meetings, present at the all hands, or present at a broader community meeting that you have within your organisation, because sometimes it actually comes down to visibility. So they'd be my two things, Mari. It'd be around the storytelling of ABM, making sure that you do actually have the hard metrics to support it and a strong business case, but also make it visible.
Thank you. And what about you, Kerry?
Well, for me, I'd say it's got to be readiness. There's one thing you've got to be sure of, is that you're ready. And I think the most important aspect is whether sales and marketing in your company is at a maturity level where they can work really well together, evenly in a partnership, and in a rather complex program where they have defined roles and SLAs. Each operate in their own swim lanes, but they help and support each other as required, and as the program is built, as the program is improved, and it's constantly being improved and reported on. And I think it's important to recognise this is not a regular campaign. I think all of the marketers in the audience would acknowledge that in most of our marketing campaigns, certainly true for us, there is, it's a light touch for sales. There's little or no requirement for sales to execute. They need to know about it. They want the leads. They can talk about it, but they're not really actively executing. In ABM, that is different. So I like to think of the well-known 4 legs of a table analogy, where the 4 legs are necessary for the table to stand level. If a leg is shorter or longer or missing, it means the table's just not going to balance. And so in the ABM, one to a few, the context of the 4 legs, in this context, it's sales as 1 leg. And there may be different sales teams and people, but that sales element, the business executive sponsor, and that harks back to what Colleen has just said as well, having a senior leader being able to talk about your success and what you're doing. Having an ABM agency is your third leg, who has a number of skills, has the people, inside sales, content designers, data insight gatherers, social media team, and so on. And then the fourth leg is marketing. So the marketers owning the program and the marketers in the field who also feed into the program. And so the tabletop that rests on these four strong legs is our ABM playground. And it's where all the threaded processes and the engagement model exist. It's where the cadence, communication, and the reporting activities reside. All of these elements working together are ultimately what I believe will give your program the best chance for success. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kerry and Colleen. I have loved every minute of this conversation with you today. You've provided some practical advice, insights, inspiration to us all. So we much appreciate the time today talking about ABM and how not to lose effectiveness of it through scalability. So thank you very, very much. And Andrew, if you are still with us, it's now back to you.
Still with us. And Mari, thank you so much for your input there and energy. It was an absolutely wonderful session. So thanks to all of you. Well, we now head to the final session of the day, which is both virtual networking drinks and an open mic, which is going to be really exciting, with the discussions entitled Managing HQ, Regional and Local Interplay. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So grab a drink and remember to use that next session button in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll see you over there really soon at 3 p.m. for a kickoff. Thanks very much.